Following the fourth video in this series, which was on the Amazons, very connected to Troy, I wish to conclude the series, or at least for this time. I may add others in the future, with Cassandra. She was known as the Oracle of Troy, the one that no one listened to in regard to her dire prophecy about the destruction of Troy. However, according to what I receive and another source, which I will be talking about, she wound up in Delphi. She did not die in Troy. So this is about her story, but also about the oracles of Delphi. Cassandra, known as the Prophetess of Troy, was the daughter of Priam and Hecuba, the king and queen of Troy. She was gifted with the ability to foresee events, a talent that manifested in her childhood when a serpent in her visions told her she would predict the doom of her people. Contrary to some historical narratives, Akashic insights reveal that Cassandra was not murdered in, and I'm going to have to spell this, Mycenae. Instead, she managed to escape to Delphi in Greece, where she briefly served as a Delphic oracle. During her time in Delphi, Cassandra was confronted with demands from the political authorities of that era to deliver false prophecies. She refused to comply, leading to an attempt by a group of soldiers to arrest her. In response, Cassandra chose to leap from a cliff rather than be captured. Despite her tragic life and ending, she maintained a deep belief in the guiding spirit. This belief allowed her to experience moments of joy even during times of great despair. Now, generally, I do not make a habit of speaking about my perceived past incarnations on YouTube. However, I couldn't leave that part of the story out here. There wouldn't be any story, because this would be the end of the video right about here, unless I reveal that it is my insight, Akashic insight, personal insight, whatever you want to call it, that I was incarnated as Cassandra. However, again, I'm not going to set that in stone. This is my experience. That's what I tell people when they do sessions with me and I give them past lives. I say, this is my experience of what I'm receiving about your incarnations. So that's the way I'm approaching this. Now, what I'm reading here to you about the vision that I had and all of this came from the early 1990s. So proceeding, I received a strong vision of myself in a past life with 3 of the current Isis Templars. Well, I had a group then called the Isis Templars, and we were doing spiritual work together, again orchestrated through me by Thoth. We were sealed away in a cave in a sacred mountain, being sacrificed to that mountain god, whom I believe was Zeus. We wore Greek attire, and a previous image which had flashed in my mind of a serpent-like dragon carved in stone reappeared in this cave. I knew that there had been a war which our people had lost. They were angry with us, blaming our mixing of god, goddess, and the sun temple. However, we were able to find a way down through the cavern into a labyrinth which led to a beautiful vaulted chamber, lit by a mysterious light that seemed to come from the walls itself. In this room were many beautiful things, golden tablets, singing bowls, and a full-length mirror that seemed to be like liquid mercury. When you looked into it, you saw your image change into images of your former lives, and perhaps future lives as well. There were other chambers in which we entered, including one containing a sealed sarcophagi. Finally, we found a passage to the outside world. We contacted some of our sister priestesses who were still alive and whom we trusted, and they came with us into this mountain temple. We had a young boy whom we protected. He was the representation of the Sun King. After a period of time, I felt that we dispersed from this place, going our separate ways. I do not know what became of the boy. During our time in the mountain, we were initiated into the most inner mysteries of the serpent. There was a high priestess who had instructed us secretly during our days in the sun temple above. She was a very tall, striking woman. When we found ourselves in the inner temple of the shining walls, she came to us again. We were surprised. How could she have known where to find us? She smiled and explained that it was our destiny to come into the inner temple. Here she instructed us for a period of time before we were sent out into the world again. Some of us were killed very soon afterward. Others were captured and went into slavery, yet a few managed to continue the work in other lands. At some point in all of this, not during the original vision, I had realized we had been Trojans. After the siege of Troy, the remaining people turned on us as they felt we had defiled the temple of Apollo with his enemy, the Serpent Mother. This unraveling story began to suddenly become more real to me as nearly 15 years ago, that's 15 years ago from 1990, 91, something like that, I had seen myself as a woman of Troy, but I was in warrior dress riding a white horse. I was at the time puzzled as I did not think that women were warriors in Troy. Then also around that time, I came across a brief passage mentioning Cassandra, a prophetess of Troy. It gave no other information. I strongly felt, though, that I was pulled toward that identity, feeling deep inside that I had been Cassandra. I never read any of the literature on Troy, so was not that familiar with her role in the myth, which of course was not a myth. At the time, I became frustrated with these feelings as I could not logically reconcile my strong image of being a warrior, not very appealing to me, with a prophetess. But in 1993, the date, it was all beginning to come together for me. As a result of my cavern vision, I researched Troy and Cassandra. I then read Marion Zimmerman Bradley's The Firebrand, a novel on Cassandra. It is fictional, but as is the case with all of Ms. Bradley's works, such as The Mists of Avalon, there's a great deal of truth within it. The following information from The Firebrand I believe to be the truth, and this is that Cassandra was sent at a young age to be raised by her aunt, who was an Amazon warrior. When she returned to Troy, she became a sun priestess of Apollo. But during her time with the Amazons, she had been also initiated into the domain of the Serpent Mother. In the temple of Apollo, she worked with and cared for the temple serpents. It was thought in that age that Apollo had defeated the Serpent Mother and that they were mortal enemies. This, of course, was not true, only a myth of the patriarchs. Now, much of the tale of Cassandra in this novel I felt was not actually as it happened, but the basic story rang as authentic to me and very personal. Was I really Cassandra of Troy? I feel now that I was, but what does that really mean? Was my soul the soul that inhabited Cassandra's body, or was I a soul that connected archetypally to her life experience? I came to believe that either way, we are those identities our souls karmically experience. There's no division of time. If I was Cassandra, am I still Cassandra? maybe through this understanding, there are several Cassandras. Okay, that's the end of what I wrote then, and I think I was overthinking it at the time. However, it's come now into my field that archetypification is an aspect of identifying and deeply connecting to an entity. But then there's also incarnation, which is a separate thing. And I truly feel, in my feeling body, in my emotional self, that I incarnated as Cassandra. But it doesn't really matter. The point is, in this fable or truth or mythology, is that it's all real if you accept the truth of it in a way that helps your soul to evolve. Now, if it doesn't help your soul to evolve, well, forget it, even if it was a past life of yours. So, any way you want to cut it, this is an experience I had, and I'm sharing it here with you as part of this series because we're all involved in evolving and understanding our path and how present, past, and future, connect to that in the great scheme of things. And of course, past and future are all happening in the now moment, if you take it outside the context of linear time. From the Thothic perspective, never set anything into stone. But at the same time, follow your spiritual guidance, your directive in what feels right to you, and allow it to help you in your developing awareness. If at some point in time you feel it's no longer helping you to develop, to grow in spiritual consciousness, then turn it loose. Don't judge it, just turn it loose and move on to something that does. To return to Cassandra and the oracles of Delphi, I just wish to move into my current experience of this, my feelings about it, my insights. I see her coming into Delphi at a time when there was upheaval. It was not quite the time where the politicians were controlling everything. Sound familiar? But it was nearing that point. And there was a lot of disorganization in how the priestesses, the oracles, and those who governed the Delphi institution were attempting to keep it sacrosanct and not allow it to be infringed upon. So this was a time when Cassandra was not only becoming an oracle there, she was involved in the whole intrigue. And the priestesses, for the most part, were true to their calling. So this meant that many of them left. They simply left Delphi because they would not comply with the patriarchal decisions being made through the politics. As things developed, this is what happened. It didn't happen immediately when Cassandra arrived, but that's where it went. But for a period of time, Cassandra was truly able to feel at home there, even though there was an undercurrent of unrest. And then, she connected also with many of the women there. Some of the women there actually had come with her from the remaining priestesses of Troy. 2 or 3, I think. So I have a feeling about it at that time of great peace and embedding my soul in something that felt right to me. Again, it was not perfect. There were always challenges in life, anywhere, and those were challenges. But it seemed so much more copacetic to my nature than it had in Troy. However, time passed, not too much time, several years, and then things got really rough. As the pressures built by those in power, the politicians, the elite, whatever you want to call them from that age, the oracles were told, what to say to the important people. They didn't care what they told the masses, about their love life or their health or their wealth or anything like that. They could continue to truly be oracles for that purpose. But they said, okay, so-and-so is coming to the oracle, and this is what you're going to tell this particular person. Some of the priestesses complied. Actually, all of them that remained complied, except for Cassandra. She should have left with the others who left, but she did not for whatever reason. And I felt and feel that it was because she was just simply stubborn, and she wasn't going to let this beautiful relationship she had established at Delphi with the other priestesses, with what she did, with what she felt guided to do as an oracle. Finally, she'd found her place. And she just said, no, I'm not going to run again. She'd had to flee before in Troy, and she wasn't going to do it again. I think that was a bad decision. But anyway, that is what she did, or at least how I see it. So when they started chasing her, the soldiers, to capture her, take her away, in my vision, or I think it might have even been a dream, it happened, this vision or dream I had was much later, like in 1996, something like that. And I saw myself and felt myself running from them. And when I jumped off the cliff, I was really angry. Well, the lesson that Thoth told me, or shared with me about that experience, was never die angry. You can die frightened, you can die terrified, you can die, sad, but don't die angry. So, that's the karmic lesson for me. Concluding with the bigger picture of this story, we see history repeating itself again and again and again. When will the cycle break and we move on to a more developed way of experiencing being? And I'm speaking of the global we here. We can say, oh, those are the bad guys. There were the good guys and the bad guys. Well, yeah, but who created the bad guys? Where did all this kind of good, bad, dark, light thing develop? Why did it develop? Why is it here? Big questions, and I'm certainly not going to attempt to answer them, or even attempt, as I said, in this video. But they are questions that are looming for our human experience now, as I speak this in 2023, actually just a day or two away from 2024. It's something that we must find answers to in our own being, because we're a part of it. We cannot separate ourselves from the bad guys. We aren't the bad guys, but we can't say that we didn't play a role in creating the scenario, the petri dish that, develops these organisms of fear, hatred, destruction, power, that the archonic cloud causes to move into souls that are very ready to receive them, the host souls that have wanted power for many eons of time. We develop that stage, we call it in, all of us, as a global consensual reality. That doesn't mean that we need to feel guilty for it. It just means that we need to understand how it works and our roles in that. So I'm going to leave you with those heady thoughts as I conclude not only this video, but for the time period, the time being, this series on the Women of the Veil. I thank you for sharing this journey with me.